Okay, so let's get started for today. I wanted to do a critique hour where I just focused on your interests, and one of you requested an eye tutorial a couple of critique hours ago, so I'm going to be doing an eye tutorial today. So I'll be critiquing these pieces after I do the quick eye tutorial. But before I get started, some of you are wondering how to get your pieces on my videos. All you have to do is go to istebrak.com and click on the subreddit icon right here. I also want to ask some of you if you know what's happening to my channel. If you have any idea, if there's anybody I can speak to, some way we can figure this out, I would love to get that help. I have been struggling for a really long time to understand what's happening in my channel. I really don't get it. I don't get it. Even my 1 million views video, Why Your Drawings Suck, is getting no more views. It sounds like it's a shadow ban, but there you guys are telling me it's not a shadow ban because some of my videos are going out. I just want to understand what's happening. If YouTube really did shut down my channel, then I'll know to leave, and I'll know maybe to start a new channel or something like that. But there's no strikes on my channel. There's nothing wrong. I've never been messaged or told that I broke a rule of some kind. My videos just don't go out. So I just want to understand it. If you're watching this and know someone who might help me, I really need your help. I've been teaching for 10 years and I need just a little bit back, just a small amount back from anyone who can take 5 minutes to find me an email I haven't tried yet, find me a method I haven't tried yet. It would mean the world to me. This channel is my life. It's my job. It's my livelihood, but also it's my self-worth. This channel is my whole life. It's my whole self. I put myself into it for 10 plus years. And I just want to understand why it's been buried with no cause, with no warning, with no explanation, completely just inexplicable. And I just want to figure it out. I just want to know why. So eyes, how do we draw eyes? So you all know how to draw eyes. I've taught you how to draw eyes. A lot of your 14-day challenges are doing wonderfully because there's so many videos on my video history that have to do with eyes. But I feel like you guys need a refresher. You guys need a refresher. Oh my God, that was horrible. So, so let's talk about what are the main points that make eyes look good. And they have to do with the main points that make anybody's art improve as a whole. So some of the main points are referencing, using references, using form, okay, references, and leaving lines or just line dependence. Okay, so these three are going to change all of your art, but let's look at how they mess up eyes. So the first one, reference. Reference teaches us that eyes are functional. There's function to them. They blink, they open, they rotate. How do you make sure that something looks like it's functional? Because function equals realism. So if function equals realism, that means our drawings, in order to look realistic, our drawings also have to look like they function. Meaning they have to look like they can blink. They're realistic. Realistic means it can move. So if you think of the eye as a joint, which it is, it's just one big joint. The eyeball moves around like crazy, like move your eyes around. It can't do that if it was in the shape of a cube or a rectangular prism. It can only do that if it's a joint and if it's a sphere. And every joint in your body has a sphere-like nature to it. So these are your shoulder joints, any kind of connecting joints in your body all have a joint attached to it that is a sphere-like end. All right, so no sides, no vertices means maximal movement. So if the eye is a sphere, then why do you guys skip this step? This explains where form comes in. Form is this. This is it. This is all you have to know. And it's not just a circle, it's a sphere. Meaning you have to think of it as a three-dimensional object. You can fit it inside a box. That's what makes it a sphere. Okay, so the box has volume. Volume means any cup that you can fill with water. So that means it's volume. Volume means it has to be three-dimensional. Three-dimensional means it's X, Y, Z axis. So X, Y, and Z axis. It goes inside the canvas. It goes into the canvas. So if we figured that out, so reference explained that its function and that it needs to blink, it needs to rotate, it needs to move. Form is why it moves and why it can do all of that. Then finally is line dependence. Line dependence is you guys skipping all of this and drawing some kind of eye that looks like this, and all the lashes follow no sphere and there's no shading, and you guys are drawing all the eyebrow hairs, and you guys are also drawing all of the lash hairs, and all of this is just the worst things that you can do. It looks nice as a sketch, but then you start rendering it and everything just starts to, I mean, even this is realistic. Some of you guys just do this. So if we look at the badly done like the non-realistic, so when I say badly done, I'm measuring it by realism. So if we look at the one that's not realistic, we can see where it's leaving those first two. So the eye lids don't look like they're wrapped around a sphere. So let's reply to this question here with an equal and opposite answer that supplements all of the missing information that makes this look bad. So the very first two lines we put, these are line dependent. What is line dependence? It's a term that I started using way back when. Just to explain why you guys are drawing flat eyes. It means that you are looking at everything through symbols in your mind. Your mind learns symbols when you learn language before it learns three-dimensional images. I learned that in my psychoanalysis class in uni, and it affects everything. It's not just in art, it actually affects everything in our world, and whoever controls language controls how we perceive everything. And whoever controls the symbols attached to that language. So your language and the religion and the societal laws that are attached to that language control how you, just who you are. So going into eyes, I mean, drawing never had a chance against it because drawing was already so difficult. So you're fighting literally against the greatest current. You're moving opposite to it when you're trying to learn how to paint an eye realistically. It's not just struggling against your mind, it's struggling against everything else, your whole language system. So all the eyes that you draw, the anime that you learn, the symbols that you learned as a kid that taught you what an eye is, all of that is affecting the way you see a picture of a realistic eye. The best way to start improving is using reference, right? But in order to see the reference, you have to remedy this. That takes time. But for now, let's start here. So you will have a picture of a really realistic, so this is the reference, and this is your eye looking at the reference. Okay, so this is your eyeball from like the inside out. This is your head. So this is you looking at it. Let me just draw a head instead, or like some kind of alien head, okay? This is you looking at it, and you're looking at the reference through the symbol. Whatever this symbol might be. The symbol could be how you started cartooning when you were younger, or the cartoons you watched, or the animes you watched, or the very first image in your mind when your kindergarten teacher was teaching you the word for eye. It showed you a very flat picture of an eye, not a realistic picture of an eye. Most likely it was just like a cartoony picture. So all of that is why you are drawing eyes badly. That's it. That's it. There's a little bit more, not getting critique, all of that. That's all an extra little bit, especially if you're the kind of artist that rejects critique. Hopefully no one's like that anymore. Since I started my channel, I hope like people have been very, very good with critique, way more than when I went into it. So if we start remedying all of this by using these two, then we start fixing all the problems. So we start with a simple, and by the way, diagrams are the best way to fix line dependence. Trace over diagrams, look up those keywords in my video history. You'll find videos, hours of videos attached to that. So a trace over diagram is you just get a picture of a photo and you sketch grid lines over it so you can start understanding that it's always volume first with an eyeball, not symbols first. Okay, so when we think of a diagram, we think of drawing the most essential moving part, the biggest moving part of the diagram, which is the sphere of the eyeball. Then you have to think about the anatomical components that attach to that. So the two most important ones after that are the two anchors that hold up the eyelids. The eyelids don't just floop around like a deflated water balloon or a deflated balloon or anything like that. They are taut. They're tight against the surface of the eyeball. How do they do that? Because they're stretched across so that they can blend and glide, blink and glide easily over the eye. And so we can't just do this. We can't just do a flat, just a rainbow shaped kind of curve. We can't do it's not really a parabola, it's like a curve. We can't just do that. We have to make it contour over the eyeball, just like I've contoured these grid lines over the eyeball. But we also have to make sure that it's moving tightly across. And it's not always a perfect crest. Sometimes it's a little bit following the shape of where the iris might be, all of that. So I'm just giving it something like that. Then there's the lower eyelid. You guys always associate the lower eyelid. See what's happening here? So this is a perfect curve. I'm not doing that. I'm trying not to do that. There's no inner and outer anchors right here. I'm attaching those. So I'm doing everything opposite to this. So this is actually a reference now. The shitty drawing is a reference now. And then finally, there's the lower eyelid. Okay, and so the lower eyelid, you guys like to put it down here for some reason. The eyelid does not end at the edge of the eyeball. The eyelid ends way before the edge of the eyeball. Okay, and it does something like that. So the leftovers of the eyeball actually signify where we're gonna get bone structure. So obviously the bone is recessed, and inside it, so this is the bone, I guess, from 3/4 view, a skeleton bone from 3/4 view. The eyeball is nested really neatly and safely inside the cavity of the eye socket. So this is the cheekbone, brow bone, eye socket. That's not bone, it's a joint that's moving inside the bone, and then the nose. So if it's pushed in, that means that we're going to have this, and there's all this muscle and fat and skin, and all of that starts piling up. And so we end up getting an eyelid and a bunch of muscle pushing out and a bunch of fat and all of that squeezing and capturing, pinching all of that skin along this eye socket line. The eye socket line is different for everyone. There's some people with deep set eyes, no fat at all stored around the eye socket. And there's people with very, very heavy eyelids, like Asian eyes that have tons of fat storage. So sometimes there is no crease. It just goes straight into an eyelid, a lash line. There's no contour. So you have to just know what kind of eye you're looking at. But now you're equipped with the knowledge of how to read your form, how to read your reference and form in the reference. So I'm just going to put it in like a medium spot. This is where a line starts to work in your favor. This line is not damaging the drawing. This line is an assistant. It's helping your drawing. This is a damaging line because you're trying to summarize a ton of anatomy and physics and all of that with one simple line. This is where it gets damaging. But this, you can use this line to start off your painting to help you know where the eye socket should be. Sometimes you have a lower eye socket too. Just depends on the person. Sometimes people have lots of fat stored on the lower eyelid, but none on the top eyelid. So it's just different each time. Again, if you don't know which one to do, a reference will answer it. But now you are equipped with the power of reading your reference. So again, we have another simple little line there. And then we have the brow bone. So the brow bone, if I go back to this grid line drawing, the brow bone has another bundle of cylindrical indication moving across and over the eyeball. Why is that? Why does this guy do that? To protect the eye. Why are the eyelids the way they are? Why are you the way you are? To protect the eye. Why are lashes the way that they are? To protect the eye. Everything. Why is there, after getting the umbrella of the eyebrow bone, why do we have eyebrow hair? To protect the eye. Everything you're looking at is to protect the eyes. And then we're gonna just attach a couple more little brow bones, and then we have that recessed area in there. A couple more little bundles here and there. So that's technically what it looks like this. You like this. And then I'm just going to add a couple more here. So the eyebrow bone, now we grab our little guy here. Let's just move him over. So the brow bone, I'm aware that it's this big bundle of cylindrical bone plus fat. And so I'm gonna be aware of that. And I know that they're in females, so I did something early on I didn't show you, which is I made the upper corner, the outer corner, higher than the inner corner of those two anchors that hold together tightly the belt of the upper and lower eyelid. All right, I made them slightly higher on the outside. That adds beauty. That's a beautifying thing. And I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just teaching you the basics of a female eye right now. And I'm going to do the same thing with the eyebrow bone. I'm going to give the eyebrow bone that female signature eyebrow shape like that. So what we're dealing with here is a really, really good functional diagram now. We drew a functional diagram of an eye. Now we have to think about the details. So now I'm zooming in. You notice I've been zoomed out just so I can get an estimation of the scale, a visual estimation of the scale that doesn't cause me any problems. If I zoom in and try to get an estimation of the scale, it'll always be wrong. So I'm going to add thickness now to this eyelid, the lower eyelid, a little bit of the upper eyelid, just depends on the type of eye. The thickness is the fact that the eyelid isn't just this paper thing, it's actually a thick kind of film, right? It's got thickness to it. It doesn't just have paper thin size. It's got like maybe 2 millimeters, a millimeter of thickness. And that's just because that's how the skin works. It's got many, many different layers. There's muscles in there. There's fat, there's liquids in there. There's all kinds of inner workings. It needs space for all those pipes and tubing. Just like a wall isn't perfectly thin, functionally, the eyelid isn't perfectly thin. And so we're gonna add that thickness there and we're gonna connect them in here. Right now, this is ready for blocking. This entire eye is ready. This is the extent of what you need to sketch when you are drawing the eye. And sometimes the eyeball, it ends a little bit earlier than that. So this is a very general sketch. Sometimes the eye sockets are much lower. So remember, this is just a general guideline. The point of having the eyeball as the starting first thing that you sketch, the point of that is to remind you of the functional, where is it? Functional quality of the eye. It needs to look like it can move. And we do that by addressing it on a mechanical level by remembering the eye is a joint. Okay? So now we're going to talk about the most important things. I won't be able to paint the whole eye for class today, but we're going to talk about the most important things about painting the eye, things that you guys forget. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just give us a nice mid-tone. Anything really goes, it doesn't matter. And it's on darken. Okay. And I'm going to merge that down. The next most important thing now goes back to form, which is lighting. If you don't know how to add lighting to an eyeball, it has nothing to do with everything we covered right now and more to do with form as a whole. So if you are having trouble rendering a basic sphere, you are not ready for eyes. So just remember that an eye is a very advanced form study. That's it. Everything is a form study. Write that back to me. If everything is a form study, that means that there are elements to this eye that don't have to do with anatomy, that have to do with physics, light, all of that stuff. So anatomy and function, remember anatomy and function are synonymous right now. An eye is a joint. The joint needs anatomy to function. We are organic robots. So that's what I mean when I say function, it's anatomy. So if you're not studying the anatomy and you're going straight in with very, very little form knowledge, most likely you're going to fail. I'm proud of you for trying though. Keep trying. Art is about failing and trying. Try to do some form studies first. Don't just go in there hacking and slashing, hoping you'll learn something along the way in some brute force type of way. Learn forms, learn what a core shadow is. I'm not going to cover all that today because I'm telling you, don't get me started on form because I can go for 3 hours just talking about form. So I can't do that today because I only got 30 minutes left for class, but there are so many videos on my video history. Please go look them up. Form, spheres, cylinders, core shadow, edges, look all those keywords up and you'll find them all. So right now I started with some basic blocks, and the most important blocks really is the very first shadow block that you apply, which is the shadow of the brow bone. See how messy I am? Doesn't matter. It does not matter. The lines are still there guiding me, and so I'm not worried. And then the core shadow block. Those two are very important. But just because we have a line here for the eyelid doesn't mean this core shadow block, it stops at the lower eyelid line. No, the core shadow of the lower eyeball, of the eyeball itself, continues on to the entire eyeball. It doesn't stop. So right there. The next shadow, so we've got 3 shadows, so 2 shadows so far. The third shadow is the shadow of the lash line and the eyelid on top of the eye. So I'm just trying to find a decent shadow value here. That's the most important shadow that in that area. This is it right here. So we've got 4 shadows so far. The core shadow, the cast or core shadow of the eyebrow bone on top of the eye, the core shadow of the eyeball that touches both the eyeball and the eyelid, and then we've got the lash line shadow. And we've got one more shadow, which is a really, really important one too. Now we're talking about 4 shadows, is the eye socket shadow. This is that overlap shadow that sits over everything. Again, it's looking messy. You probably give up at this point. When it doesn't look pretty early on, we throw it away. That's just what people as a rule do. So you can't give up on it just because it looks a bit messy, because you have to trust the process. The process has been right so far. We have a really functional diagram. We have core shadows that think about the light source. We can't fail, and we're looking at the navigator right here. So now that I've overblocked, I can trust that when I smudge where I know I'm going to need to smudge along these curves here, I'm going to smudge and I'm going to end up with a well-painted piece, meaning all I have left to do is blend. I say smudge and blend interchangeably. So I'm going to lower my strength here. I'm going to smudge the crease line. Sorry, this terminology is all over the place today. All right, that's the first thing I blend out. I'm going to blend out my arrow, very important step. I'm going to blend the eyebrow with the eye socket shadow line. Really important step as well. All the steps I show you are important. I'm going to blend the the lash line shadow down. I'm going to blend the core shadow line. I'm going to blend the inside lower edge and the outside edge of the crease line. I'm going to blend the inside of the lower eyelid and the outside of the lower eyelid crease line. Okay, so all I have left to do now is to just attach the lash line, and it makes sense we add it in the end. So it's not that vital that we include it early on, but do you see the mistake? You guys add the lash line as your very first line before you even consider blocks. So I'm going to add that lash line here, right here. And I'm going to add the lower eyelash line here. And I'm going to add them in kind of a mess on the outside. because we're not painting every individual lash. Again, the bad drawing is the reference. We're painting the illusion of texture, which is a fuzz or some kind of messy jumbling of brush strokes to create the illusion that we're looking. But I'm not adding those lashes in yet. I'm just showing you. Okay, and then we're going to just radially build up some of the other highlights here and there. But before I do, I'm going to blend this all out. So the reason why this eye is reading with very, very minimal effort is because we trusted the process. The process doesn't betray you because the process it pulls from physics, it pulls from real life, it pulls from the things that matter, which are the things that make the anatomy come forth as a functional mechanic. And we leave behind all of the heavy stuff that doesn't really help us, which is the symbolic reliance. And so from a distance now, I can just comfortably attach some extra transitions, connecting the upper eyelid highlight down. And you saw where I put all those highlights. And if you want way more in-depth stuff, like I literally have a list of blocks. Every possible brushstroke has been turned into a list for you. My masterclass has it way more in depth, hours and hours of it. And soon I'll be uploading a dedicated tutorial on my Gumroad as well, with hours and hours of just eyes, different kinds of eyes, 3/4 view eyes, etc. But for now, the masterclass really is the only stage up from my critique hours, which it just goes on and on about everything. And the list really is the most important thing. It's what I'm proud of most in my masterclass, because if you ever wanted the brushstrokes down to a list for you, they're there and they're synced with the video, so it's really easy to follow. So I'm adding the inner highlight line. I'm just kind of adding a little bit more to it. I'm adding a little bit of extra highlight to the lower eyelid waterline. Really important. You don't want it white all the way through. In fact, you want it to kind of camouflage along the edges. You just want it to be white along the outer sticky outy-most part of the waterline. And the same thing with the upper eyelid. You don't want to put highlights out here and out here. That's crazy. You want to only put the highlights on the very top because that's where the light is catching. So this white of the eye is starting to look a little bit flat. And so I usually get a new layer, pure white, low opacity. And I just try to build up while shrinking my brush, the part that sticks out the most, and kind of erasing away at that to get that lash line shadow. And that really makes the eyeball feel very, very three-dimensional because it slowly catches that highlight. Okay, so this is a very, very rough explanation, but it shows you in real time that the diagramming that we did is the backbone of all of this. The diagramming that you guys saw before I started rendering, basically, is the reason why this succeeded. Okay, so all this diagramming here, all of that, this is the reason why this is possible. Okay, so if we look at these pieces submitted today, what do we see? We see a lot of success in certain areas, and we see where some things just don't make sense. So let's start with this one. I feel that you guys, because you notice there's no contrast because of a missing core shadow or two, you guys compensate because you know there's missing contrast. You compensate by having a very, very thick lash line. A very thick lash line is the first sign of a weakness in artists. When I am diagnosing students who book with me, I look here at the eye socket line. Is it structured? Does it have the right amount of contrast? Is the contrast tapered? Is the blending representing a knowledge of the bone and fat collision? What is happening in the eye socket line in the student's work? That's how I diagnose it. And then if I see this, if I see a lack of contrast in the eye socket line, Even in hooded eyes, doesn't matter. It forms a line, one of the only trenches in the face. And I see this excessive use of lash line shadow. Then I know this student is just, every day is like, you know, it's a hit or miss for them. And right now they're in that point where this artist is great. The portraits, it looks beautiful. But I see a lot of hesitation in certain areas. And so when I see this, I just shock the student with my paint over. I just almost put them in cardiac arrest, because I go in there and I just take away the entire lash line and I make them panic. Not that I like that, but they need to panic for a second. Actually, I'll just do it the way I usually do. It's just a long lash line strictly. When they see me do this, they freak out because their brain is like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? That's literally the only reason why the eye looks decent right now. What on earth are you doing? So when I get rid of it, we can see what's left in the contrast they thought they had. And then we can see how much thickness they gave that lash line. What a mistake that is. Because you are depriving the viewer of any more anatomy. You are just taking away their ability to see more of the eye. You have just blacked out some areas for no reason at all, other than this misuse of the symbol and this false belief that the more pretty and anime-esque and thick the outer outline is of that eye, which is, again, goes back to symbol, the prettier it will look. No, the prettier it looks is the more realistic it looks, with a balance of some kind of stylistic touch, not the style taking over. So when I get rid of this lash line, we actually have a much prettier eye. And if you still think that before it looks better, then it means your skill is still less. Your skill is under the radar right now, that you can't pick up this decrease in value when you have thick lash lines. Your tastes are still noobish. Sorry, but that's the truth. So when you start thinning out the lash line, you start appreciating that there really, really is only a very small window for pure black along the eye. And it doesn't need to be this insanely thick black line. Just look at where the black used to reach. All the way out here. We were losing eyeball space. We were losing eyeball shadow, the cast shadow of the lash. We were losing so much. We were losing eyelash thickness. So this lash line is a perfect example of the stuff I showed you early on, which is line dependence is how you view everything. You view the world through your symbol language. And that's not just art. So now that I got rid of that extremely thick lash line, I can now apply that eye socket line. And you know what? I'll do it with my radial shading technique. So full black, low opacity, and in a new layer. And I'm building up while shrinking my brush. I'm adding more paint until I reach a comfortable level of contrast. And then I'm deleting. I'm deleting under that eye socket line. There's different types of eye sockets. There's eye sockets that are catching the different types of lighting and different types of eye sockets. So this is not the only way black is introduced along the socket line. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you have this and you have a shadow on the upper eyelid. For now, this one is enough for this tutorial. But again, reference adds on information wherever you may be missing it. All right, so I added that bit of contrast. So let's take a look at the before and after. So before, after. Look at how thick that lash line was for no reason at all. Just because you assumed it looked better, because there was just a habitual need to add contrast there. Maybe you knew it didn't need that much, but you didn't know where else to put it. Now that you have no contrast anywhere else, you're pretty much relying too much on the lash line. The lash line is not something that should be carrying the weight of the entire contrast of the eye. And I'm just thickening the outside here just a little bit. Okay. She also looks like she's looking at something fluttering like right in front of her face. Her eyes are very drawn in. It does not look like she's looking directly at us. So that's another thing that makes eyes look functional. This artist is doing it, which is great, which is crossing the eyes inward. That makes the eyes look super realistic. But this right now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but they look like they are kind of looking at something really close to their face. And I'm just correcting that. So now I'm making the eyes look like they're looking at us. Just, you know, whatever I can do in the short amount of time. You see that? And this eye was also kind of not really looking in the right direction. And it's about the pupil, really. Once that looks like it's looking at you, then you got it right. All right, so before, after, before, after. And I don't want to make the eyes look too big, so I'm just going to shrink them. Before, after. All right, and so that's, I would say, the biggest mistake made here. Things they did right. They blended the inner and outer corners. They had a lower eyelid. The thickness of the waterline increased towards the middle. They had a shadow, I believe, of the lower lash line, upper lash line. They had the core shadow. This is why this eye looks so much, you know, like it has so much skill, and the painter had skill, because they satisfied all of the functional components. One thing I would say is that you are using a bit too much texture. Our eyes keep traveling upward towards the eyebrows. The eyebrows don't need that much texture. Remember, it's about illusion of texture, not actually trying to replace the texture one-to-one, because that's insane, using a textured brush so that it looks like you have lots of hair. It's about making the audience feel like, yes, there's hair here. Do I need to know about every individual hair and their personal backstory? No. So that's why we stay away from textured brushes like that. Before, after. Small pushes end up resulting in big changes, and that's how you get, this artist must be at a time in their journey where they're like, I know I'm good, but I don't know how to get better. That's something that you're all going to experience. It's just called being intermediate or late or early advanced or late intermediate. I don't grade, but I do categorize. And the way to jump forward from intermediate into advanced is these small, tiny changes, okay? This is how you shift from being good to being great at something, is the small stuff. It's this stuff that I'm showing you right now. It's the stuff I covered today. It's the stuff I'm fixing right now. That's what's going to separate you from the classroom, nursery room of art, and into the actual field of art. Okay, so I'm just blending some excess blocks here and there. If you don't know how to connect the cheekbone up into the eye socket, you just take one of these earlier or later, I guess, cheekbone highlighters, and you block and connect, leaving behind only the eye socket. So you leave behind this little line right here. So you guys saw the power of function today. You guys saw the power of a sketch that's not just any old sketch to start the illustration. It's a sketch that is a diagram. So a diagram is different from a sketch. Write that back to me. Write that in the comments. Tattoo it on your butt. It doesn't matter. Whatever you need to memorize it, so that you remember that you have to think of the function first, and everything else falls into place, because function is form, function is anatomy, function is a step from the line dependence. Function answers everything, but function is such an abstract word to a lot of you. Most of the time it's not even in your vocabulary. And so how do you supplement that missing knowledge or missing awareness? Just diagram. The word diagram is so important here. I'm going to add that little kind of bump that happens right before you kind of didn't have it. But everything about the way this artist painted is beautiful. The blending is great. The blocking is just phenomenal. This artist's level is up there, and the practice is showing. So I'm just adding a couple more. The skin texture does look a bit muddy, but because you're kind of using similar values here, but it could just be that it's darker skin. All right, so before, after, small changes, big results, and that's how you get from intermediate to advanced. For this eye, so I think the biggest issue that you're dealing with in your 14-day challenge right now, and by the way, what is a 14-day challenge? You draw a portrait for 14 days, you submit each drawing. It doesn't have to be 14 days straight. It could be over a 3-4 month period if it has to be. And you submit it to the subreddit, istebrak.com, and you go to the subreddit icon in the top right corner, and you get critiques, and you keep doing it until you do 14 installments, and you compare the first to the last, and it's always insane. It's insane. The results are unbelievable. And this just shows you the power of practice, but overlapping practice that is over a series of days, giving your brain isn't against you. Your brain is your helper. It's your servant. It's there to help you through whatever you ask it to do. And it just needs repetition. It needs assistance. And the 14-day challenge works with your brain, not against it. You find the way you need to work. You learn how you learn, your learning style, and you go from there. So you see how much trouble I was having selecting the background? That's a sign your light environment is just mud and a milk bath at this point. So I'm just going to pick a light environment value that'll help your values. So this one right here is fine. You really need to think about what you're doing with your background, because what you do with your background affects the values you pick in the illustration. They are hand in hand. So for this eye, this set of eyes, I think the biggest issue, the biggest weird part is the fact that the shadow of the eye socket is not connecting to the eyebrow. The eyebrow is the eyebrow bone. The eyebrow is the eye socket. They're the same thing. It's the mountain and its shadow. That's it. So you need to connect these shadows together, whatever you have to do. And that gives us the remainder, which is this kind of blocky look. Because it's a feminine face, we have to blend it out, so to show that there's no severe angularity that's almost masculine with testosterone and all those heavy brow bones that men have. So we just kind of blend that out. That would be, I think, the biggest issue that you had going in. So I'll get the before. And just to show you. So before, after, you see that? Your brow bone wasn't part of the diagram. The diagram includes the brow bone. Write that back to me. And that's really the biggest difference here, is that we have an actual brow bone that's part of the family of bone structure of the eye. And I think the next thing is that the white of the eye is actually kind of dim. Everything in this portrait, it feels dim. It feels like the light's been off, and but there's a lot of light. It's weird. It's like we're seeing everything through curtains and curtains and curtains that are sheer. So I think that's why you were having some issues. So just make the eyes feel a bit more white. Give us some contrast there, and then give us some light on the inner anchor there of the eye, and that'll make the eye feel like it has moisture, it has all of that structure. A lower lash line goes a long way. It doesn't have to be super rendered. And finally, because that's the kind of eye you drew, a stronger lower eyelid shadow. And it can be also radial. Do you see what I just did? Brush stroke, brush stroke, brush stroke, until I reached a edge line, and then I surrounded that with one more edge for the eye, for the cheekbone, just there. So all of that goes a long way as well. Doesn't take a lot. Remember, the lower eyelid has fat in it as well, so you can see that it's actually jumbled up and a little bit fatty. So before, after, before, after. The diagram is functional. The diagram is functional with anatomy and with form. And so you were missing the core shadow of the eyeball. It felt like you ironed the eyeball or pushed it too far into the eye socket, which doesn't make sense because it can't just be an oblong shaped eyeball. Moving forward, this eye right here is a 3/4 view eye. So this one is a little bit just too much stuff happening. And I just want to give this artist a quick message. Stop this. Stop all of this. I know you're having fun painting characters and all that, but the least you could do is start doing 14-day challenges or some kind of 3/4 view 14-day challenge or something to alongside all of this masterpiece, quote unquote. Okay, you should not be pursuing full illustrations if you are unaware of the surface contours that you're looking at. Proof that you have issues with surface contours. There's no cylinder in the lips. The lips look like they're front view forced to be 3/4 view by flattening the far side. The upper eyelid, it just has a line. The crease just has a line. The shadows of the like the whole area here is just all part of the same jumbling of shadows. It's just like the illusion that there's functional shadows there. There isn't. You're outlining the lower waterline, and the brow bone is so low. It's like the brow bone should be up here. The brow bone isn't doing something that small. It's not that low. The eyebrow bone is the eyebrow, okay? So you're doing a lot of stuff too early, and your art is going to suffer. You're going to pick up all these symbolic habits, all of these things. So to fix these things, I'm just going to focus on the eye, is to extend this lower eyeball shadow. It's not to just let it be a line. To blend this out, which is the inner and outer part of the lower eyelid, to give this a bit more thickness, and to at least try to, I don't know how I'm going to do that with all that hair, raise the eyebrow bone. I don't think I can do that. I'm just going to erase it. And to raise the eyebrow hair upward. Okay, so just completely relieving this area of any eyebrow. Honestly, it shouldn't even be showing. There's so much hair. And to give the eyebrow bone some highlight. There's no crease shadow at all. So I'm going to try to throw one in there by blocking and blending, but blending only on the top side. And there's not much light variation, so a little bit of light along the waterline, along the upper eyelid, and along the white of the eye. And a completely and totally missing lash shadow. And then right here, it's just too dark. Okay, so I hope today was insightful. I hope it was helpful. There's a lot of other ways you guys are making mistakes with your diagramming and sketching. It's not just one thing. And there's so many different examples of this, and of course I can't get into all of them. But I hope today showed you one of the biggest ones, and that one is really the one that a lot of people care about, because eyes are very important to artists. Eyes are important to humans, period. And that's why we love drawing them. That's why we go straight to them. It was one of the first things I learned how to draw. So I hope today was helpful for you guys. Remember, diagrams are everything because they represent a sketch that that has anatomy and in mind. So small changes. Not sure about big results just yet because I don't have a lot of time, but it took away a little bit of that uncanniness that you had before. So thank you everyone for watching. If you guys want to see your work on my videos, please go to istebrak.com and click on the subreddit icon right here. Portrait Studio sale will happen in like 2 weeks. It'll be 50% off, along with my masterclass that I discussed earlier. That is going to be on sale as well. I go through pretty much everything. And if you want to join on Discord to submit your art, you can also do that. And please consider supporting me on Patreon, even if it's just $1. I know you may say somebody else will do it if it's just $1, but I really want everybody on board. It keeps the channel going. And for anyone out there who can help me figure out what's happening with my channel, I'd really appreciate it if you reached out through my Discord, if you join it and send me a DM, or through my email submission system from my private tutoring page or the store page. If you scroll all the way down, you can send a submission and just help me out. I'm really trying to figure out what's going on with my videos. Even my 1 million views video is actually suffering. It's not getting recommended and the views aren't going up. Subscribers are going down. Every report that I get, subscribers are 0 new subscribers. I just don't get it. I don't understand what I could possibly have done for this silent ban from YouTube. I don't understand it at all. I don't have any strikes on my channel or anything. So thank you guys for watching today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.